Hi, and welcome everybody. This session is called A Peek into the Future of Identity and Access Management in Hybrid IT. My name is Eric Karlisnky. I'm the product manager for Okta Access Gateway and Hybrid Access at Okta. And I'm joined by Lance, who's the product marketing manager at Okta for Access Gateway. So we're going to be covering a broad topic today, which is hybrid IT. We're going to start with sort of laying the foundation. We're going to discuss how hybrid IT is not going anywhere and how we see our customers thinking about hybrid IT. Then we're going to get into how you can actually connect all of your hybrid IT resources using Okta's various products in this area. And then we'll spend the majority of the time talking about Okta Access Gateway, which is a relatively new product that Okta offers, which helps organizations extend Okta to hybrid IT in specific ways for web applications. We'll do a demo of Okta Access Gateway, and then we'll conclude with the roadmap of where we're taking the product going into the future. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, our thesis for this first section is that hybrid IT is not going anywhere. What do we mean when we say that? First, we got to define hybrid IT. This includes hosted services, public cloud, and on-premises data centers. So it's not just things that are on-premises or under the desk. It includes a broad gamut of things. Hybrid IT is prevalent in large companies, and the reason that this is the case can vary, right? Maybe you're a company and you're growing organically, and your customers are more spread out than they used to be. That's causing you to expand globally and open new offices. Maybe you're trying to hire where the talent is and you're moving to more of a distributed model for hiring. Maybe you have compliance requirements that in order to operate in key markets that cause your business to be sort of distributed and to operate differently in different geographies. Or maybe you purchase a company through M&A to accelerate your business, and they're not necessarily going to share the same headquarters. Probably more likely than not, especially if you're a large organization that's been around for a while, it's some combination of all of these things. And so this pretty much happens to every company of a certain age and size. Basically, it's a symptom of success as a company. So it's not a question of whether this happens. Really, the question is about what happens next. What do we do in this world of where hybrid IT is so prevalent? From an IT perspective, the trends here tend to fracture IT operations. So we see IT teams, when we talk to them, they find themselves responsible for dozens of environments. They're scattered across the globe. The resources are scattered. Your users are using different technologies and various approaches. Let's look at just a small subset of what IT is responsible for, which is the applications that an organization uses. You have some applications that are going to SaaS, and with good reason. You have some that are being hosted by a third party. Some are third-party applications that are hosted by IT but are purchased from a vendor. Some are actually custom applications, and this one's actually increasingly common from what we can see, that technology teams are building and operating, and IT is on the hook to support and increasingly to participate in the development and operation of these technologies. This one I just want to highlight as being increasingly common because companies actually see this one in particular as an opportunity to differentiate themselves through technology from their competitors. So organizations see that the more adaptive they are and the more agile they are when it comes to building new technologies to support their business, the more differentiated and more successful they're going to be in the market. And again, the most likely scenario in this case is that you probably have some hodgepodge of all of these. So for all of those of you who are in IT, you can probably relate to some of these challenges. And this is why hybrid IT is not just prevalent, but it's growing. 89% of companies are adopting a hybrid IT environment. 89% of companies, it's the vast majority. And when you look at the combination of on-premises and hosted and public cloud, the overlap there is what we're talking about. Now, hybrid IT is admittedly a buzzy term that we use, but it encapsulates what we're talking about here. Technology professionals are trying to meet the demands of global business these days, and hybrid IT is a component. Not only is hybrid IT growing, but actually the more successful organizations that we see are the ones, especially for large organizations, are the ones that are embracing this change. To them, hybrid IT provides options. It provides an opportunity. So a very interesting stat in this area that 80% of IT leaders surveyed by IDC report repatriating workloads. That means bringing workloads back from public cloud. So if public cloud is cheaper, it's more flexible, it's better technology, and all these things are true, why then would organizations be repatriating workloads and bringing them back into their hosted data centers or their on-premises data centers? Let's hope they're not bringing them back and putting them back in the server underneath the desk. I think the more we can move away from that model in general, the better. But they are repatriating workloads into their own environments. And the reason for this is there are a lot of drivers. The top ones are security and performance and cost, and then also control and centralizing or reducing shadow IT. And particularly, if you look at the bottom right corner, those last three, so these are the top 5 reasons, the last three of those combined all really come back to control. It's control over the cost of running your IT operations. It's control over which technologies are being used by which users, and just maintaining a centralized view and sense of control over that. And so when you look at organizations who are successful, it's the ones that are looking at the benefits of public cloud and infrastructure as a service, looking at the benefits of SaaS, but also keeping in mind that there are some things that they can just do cheaply and more securely and more in a more performant way themselves, because of the characteristics of their business. And so that's why I think we're starting to see a lot of repatriation, but as part of a broader trend of hybrid IT expanding. So our hybrid IT is growing. And if we reflect back on 2020, there's just been an acceleration of some of these trends that are feeding this, right? So not only are companies already distributed, but now their employees are working from home from anywhere in the world. Budgets are more constrained because companies are really trying to ruthlessly prioritize in this environment. Industries themselves are rapidly shifting. So not only are we looking at different approaches to the same type of industry, but we see industries being upended because of the paradigm shift that the pandemic's brought about. But really, these are accelerations of trends we were already seeing. And not to mention kids running around on my Zoom calls. Don't blame me if one barges in behind me. It's definitely not out of the question. And all I can say about all these trends are hashtag 2020, may better years be ahead of us. But if we look at that, again, as an acceleration of these trends, the challenges that are associated with that from an IT perspective is how do I traverse network boundaries in a world where no one's on the same network anymore? How do I get control over the myriad access control mechanisms I have? How do I manage isolated data stores? And how do I provide a user experience that's not fragmented as a result of the fragmentation of my environments? And when we translate those into identity goals, which is what we're really here to talk about today, in the context of identity, these goals are: how do I make my hosted applications available to anyone, anywhere, with as little friction as possible? How can I use one set of credentials to log in anywhere? How can I avoid the cost and risk of syncing identities across those silos, these isolated data stores? And then how can I provide a cohesive experience across a heterogeneous environment? It really comes down to that. How can I make my users not have to jump through hoops to do their jobs or to interact with my business? And so where Okta comes in is Okta provides a suite of capabilities to help you connect all of your hybrid resources into Okta so you can provide a better experience. So we're going to spend the bulk of our time today talking about Access Gateway, and I'll hand it over to Lance in a second to talk through that. But also keep in mind that we have Advanced Server Access, which connects to infrastructure via SSH and RDP. So really connecting at the infrastructure and server level. And it's going to expand in the near future to connect to containers and databases. We have agents that connect via various legacy protocols to help you connect to servers, Wi-Fi, and VPN. For those who don't know, our agents take Okta and they apply that to legacy non-web protocols. So things like Radius and things like RDP. We have a plugin for Microsoft ADFS. We have a plugin for Epic EPCS, which is a healthcare software. The benefits here are that you get that Okta-like experience, and in particular that single credential to authenticate to all these resources that are on premises. And you also get to layer on things like multi-factor authentication and smart auth there. Advanced Server Access, which you can learn more about in one of the sessions that we refer to towards the end of the presentation. There's a whole session roadmap around this one. But the key benefits here are around connecting to Linux and Windows servers. Not only can you extend Okta's benefits to Linux and Windows servers, but you do it in a way that's passwordless, that uses ephemeral certificates to authenticate the user versus them having to type in a username and password all the time. We're expanding into more and more privileged access controls as well. But like I said, the majority of our conversation today is going to be around Okta Access Gateway. And to kick that portion of it off, I'm going to hand it over now to Lance. Lance?
Thank you, Eric. Hello, everyone. My name is Lance. I'm a product marketing manager for OAG here at Okta. And over the next few minutes, I'll walk you through the most important things to know about Okta Access Gateway, including how it's helping customers solve their hybrid identity challenges. In a nutshell, OAG Access Gateway enables customers to extend Okta single sign-on and adaptive multi-factor authentication to web apps that do not support modern integration standards without changing legacy source code. It supports legacy authentication methods like header-based or URL auth, as well as Kerberos. It also helps protect complex apps like Oracle, eBusiness Suite, PeopleSoft, and others. What makes OAG unique in the market, though, is that it helps customers consolidate on a single identity platform across cloud and on-prem apps. Because Okta was born in the cloud, OAG can deliver the reliability, simplicity, and cost savings available with Okta to protect your legacy on-prem apps. This is unique in the market because there aren't any cloud-native identity as a service providers protecting legacy on-prem apps at scale. And legacy identity vendors are struggling to evolve products that were originally built for on-prem only environments and move them to the cloud. As a result, customers are left struggling with many of the challenges that Eric just spoke about, including disjointed identity silos and broken end-user experiences. The big picture here is OAG allows you to modernize legacy infrastructure with modern, cloud-first authentication and consolidate on a single identity platform across hybrid environments. The result is an integrated environment with centralized access controls for your on-prem and cloud applications, with efficient, uniform security policies across all of your systems. And users can actually access any app from wherever they are at any point in time and through any device. They can do so using a single set of credentials, and they don't even have to think about which applications are hosted where. There are two primary use cases where we see Okta customers using OAG to solve critical hybrid identity challenges. The first use case is modernizing access to legacy web apps with modern identity solutions like single sign-on and adaptive multi-factor authentication, as well as other Okta tools. This helps customers consolidate disjointed identity policies on a single platform and deliver a cohesive user experience. The second use case is enabling secure remote access to on-prem applications for any user, regardless of where they are located. This helps businesses reduce their dependency on VPNs, which struggle when a large number of users request access altogether and pose an inherent risk if used improperly. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the first use case, modernizing access to legacy apps. Companies that have been around since before the explosion of the cloud are very likely to have mission-critical applications, either licensed or custom-built, running on premises. Sometimes moving these applications to the cloud can be an incredibly complex, multi-year task. And in some particular scenarios, for example, when companies operate in highly regulated industries, moving to the cloud might not even be an option at this time. However, protecting these resources with modern security continues to be a top priority. This is where OAG comes in. Customers can modernize access to legacy on-prem apps by extending Okta single sign-on and adaptive multi-factor authentication without the need to write a single line of code. OAG makes Okta the only identity as a service provider that can fully replace legacy single sign-on and web access management solutions like SiteMinder and Oracle Access Manager, which are very expensive to maintain, and some of which are actually being retired or deprecated by vendors. And finally, OAG helps customers standardize complex identity silos onto a single, unified system. How does this work? Well, this slide shows a bird's-eye view of some of the complexity that is often involved in enabling secure access to on-prem apps using legacy WAM or SSO tools. These solutions involve a multitude of elements, typically. They require large server capacity and demand a lot of manual work to run, and even more to maintain, making them very expensive, not only in terms of the dollar amount they take, but also in terms of the human capital required to operate them. With Okta, the story changes dramatically. It is a huge burden moved away from the customer, liberating IT resources to focus on other, more important elements of the business strategy. Most of the components that require large server capacity we can deliver from the Okta Identity Cloud. So there's no need for directories or databases, no need for federation servers or MFA add-ons. All of that is taken care of by Okta. Because of this, OAG customers can see and have seen up to 70% in cost reductions. Also, OAG delivers the web access management capabilities from a single system, which serves as both an identity-aware proxy and an access management enforcement point. An exciting customer story that I wanted to share with you about the power of OAG is Alliance Data. Like many large organizations, Alliance Data runs a complex IT infrastructure with data centers, on-prem solutions, and VPNs. But as the company grew via mergers and acquisitions, they realized they needed to scale, even while maintaining mission-critical applications running on premises. With Okta and OAG, Alliance Data achieved three important goals. First, they consolidated identity and access management across 93 production apps, including 19 mission-critical apps hosted on premises. They also effectively simplified the overall onboarding process for newly acquired companies. And finally, they realized a stronger security posture, enabling more granular access management capabilities for legacy apps. But not only are legacy solutions not cutting it anymore, like Eric mentioned before, industries are changing rapidly. All companies are becoming tech companies, and employees are everywhere and accessing from many different devices. On top of that, think about 2020, when we had sudden overnight work from home orders, where businesses had to pick up any tools that were immediately available to use in use cases that were beyond their capabilities. One good example of this is using VPNs to enable remote access to on-prem resources for the entire workforce. VPNs are typically hard to scale across the entire organization and may be a liability if used improperly. Okta customers found a more suitable solution in OAG, which allowed them to enable secure access to on-prem apps at scale, deliver granular security that scales across cloud and on-prem apps with a seamless user experience, and reduce their dependency on VPNs for non-tech savvy users. How does this work? Well, OAG allows customers to move from an all-or-nothing approach to traversing network boundaries, which increases the surface area exposed to attacks, to authenticating and authorizing the right user into the right application at the right time. OAG can provide business users with secure access to the apps they need without having to use a VPN. This liberates VPN capacity for approved users to access other more sensitive on-prem computing resources in a more secure way. Another exciting customer story is health research. When COVID hit last year, health research, like most other companies, found themselves in a situation where a large number of their workforce was either working from home or being reassigned to work in non-standard locations. The company wasn't ready to support that volume of remote workers. Their highly critical in-house built applications weren't available to users unless they were on the private network. This is where OAG came in. Health research had actually already begun using Okta to provide users access to cloud applications through a single set of credentials. And with OAG, they were able to extend this highly secure user experience to their homegrown applications, some of which continue to play a very critical role in their business. And by doing so, they saw a dramatic reduction of internal support requests. So that's the high-level overview, what I believe is the most important things to know about OAG. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Eric to walk you through a real live demo of how OAG can help your business. Eric?
Thank you. So the goal with Access Gateway is to connect Okta to your on-premises applications, especially web applications, even though they don't support these modern standards. And so really the goal from a demo perspective is that all of your on-premises applications look and feel just like any other Okta SaaS application we'd be connecting to. So I'm going to try to walk through that in this demo today. So this is my demo org. First, I'm going to start with showing a login to Box. So Box, as you all know, is a SaaS application, and you know this experience of logging into Box with Okta. You click on the icon, you're logged right in, and it uses SAML in the back end to facilitate that. So no passwords are involved, no passwords are stored, and yet the user logs in directly and simply. But what about these legacy applications? For this, we chose, for this demo, Oracle EBS. And we're using a rapid SSO method of integrating with Oracle EBS, which is what that label indicates, and I'll talk about that in a second. So the goal here is to be as box-like as possible. In this case, it's prompting me for a second step of multi-factor authentication. That's purely policy. That's something that I specified because this is an on-premises application that contains HR and business sensitive information. So I want that extra level of security. And then after I do multi-factor authentication, you can see the typical Okta experience, and I'm logged right into eBusiness Suite. So not only was that fast and secure because I was multi-factor authentication, but it was a SaaS-like experience. And you notice I didn't connect to any VPNs or anything. And this is something that I'm hosting locally in this environment. Well, not locally, but I'm hosting it in my own data center in this demo. And the way that that works, we actually have a sample header application to illustrate that before I show the admin side of things. And the way that works is something called header-based authentication. And a lot of legacy providers like a CA SiteMinder and Oracle Access Manager work this way as well. And it provides securely to the backend application identity information and identifiers for the session to provide that secure access, as well as providing the data that that backend application needs from the identity provider directly. And it does that through using HTTP headers. So this sample application shows all the HTTP headers that I can send from Okta through Access Gateway to the backend application. The possibilities are really limitless here. You can see this long list of attributes that are supported today. In fact, an unlimited number of applications are supported, and you can send any kind of data that the backend application is expecting. You can even send things like secrets. This value here is a secret value. It's actually can be encrypted and is not shared with the end user. It's only shared with the backend application. It's being surfaced here because it's a sample application, but wouldn't be in a production environment. So a lot of flexibility there. So on the back end, it's straightforward as well. So this is actually Access Gateway and how you'd set up these applications. So I'm just going to choose one here. This is the header-based one on top. You can see I have a list of applications that are tied to my Okta tenant. When I edit this application, I have some basic metadata that I set up here. And some of the real power is right on this first screen with behaviors. So Access Gateway supports various behaviors. One of them I want to highlight here to just give you an idea about how these work. And the power here is session integrity failed. So what Access Gateway is doing is it's an inline reverse proxy. So all the traffic is going through Access Gateway. And that means it can detect events and respond to events that may compromise the security of the session. In this case, we have a session integrity check that's built into Okta Access Gateway that will detect when the user agent actually changes or when the client IP changes. So let's say there's a man-in-the-middle attack. The session is taken from the legitimate end user's valid browser session, and they try to replay that session on their own device. The IP will have changed, and this will detect that. And you can configure what Access Gateway does about that. So you can choose to ignore this. You can choose to redirect to a custom URL or a custom error page when this happens, or force reauthentication at that point. And ideally, that attacker can't defeat that reauthentication prompt. So this just starts to give you a sense of the power that is possible because Access Gateway is an intermediary between your application and your end user. The attributes, again, I showed this on the sample header application, but this could be a long list of attributes that are passed from Okta into Access Gateway and then ultimately to the backend application. You can also augment whatever comes from Okta with custom data from data sources like a local database or a local directory. And then finally, on the policies page, you can specify very specific policies around not only which application is protected, but you can even have policies when I specify a protected rule that protects specific application subpaths. You can have in the advanced section, you can set up custom configuration for custom policies and behaviors based on certain events. So very powerful, even though that end user experience that I showed you at the beginning is very simple. So this is what I wanted to highlight with Access Gateway. The power behind the scenes is belied by a smooth SaaS-like end user experience. So imagine you're a company who immediately everyone goes home and starts to work remotely, and you're using a VPN to connect on-premises applications. When you use a VPN, there's a certain user experience barrier, but if you're extending your access and you're extending your resources to non-tech savvy users, imagine if you could do so in a way that the experience is just like logging into Box with Okta. It's seamless, it's multi-factor authentication that everyone's familiar with, and there's no extra hoops to jump through. That's the kind of vision we have for supporting remote access in a way that doesn't further increase your burden on VPN, which Lance talked about. So hopefully this demo was helpful in illustrating that. I'm going to switch back to the slides now. All right, so that demo highlights the power of where we are with Access Gateway today and some of the power that our customers are seeing using Access Gateway in production for their legacy and on-premises custom applications today. So now let's talk about what's next. Well, you can't talk about what's next without understanding the product, which we showed in the demo, but also understanding how we got to this point. And over the past year, we've been focused on three primary things. We've introduced more deployment options and control to Access Gateway to give customers with complex workflows and complex scenarios and complex requirements for their applications more flexibility in how they configure Access Gateway. So now Access Gateway works in more environments and more permutations. We've also delivered brand new admin experiences from log forwarding to certificate management to log verbosity controls to give admins, again, more control and a better self-service experience for setting up OAG. And we also achieved our FedRAMP moderate authorization, which for our federal customers means that they're able to be used for government scenarios. But for our non-federal customers, it's really just an attestation to the level of security that we invest in delivering this product. Even though it's an appliance that you install on your premises and it's not a part of the Okta cloud, it's still something that we apply the same security rigor to. And we've also introduced new capabilities to improve the security of the application access, such as granular session expiry. So that's what we've been working on for the past year or so. But our vision for Access Gateway, really, it starts with where we are today. And Access Gateway is a bridge and a connector to your on-premises environment, but there's a lot more we can do with it. Think of the long-term benefit of Access Gateway as not just being a single appliance or a single cluster of appliances to connect to a single application. Think of it as being a fabric to connect Okta to your on-premises applications and resources of all types. So think in the future of expanding Access Gateway to include APIs, for example. Also expanding the simplicity of deploying Access Gateway such that you can deploy multiple clusters and maintain them all centrally and maintain central visibility. But you can deploy them across the globe in different geographies and to meet the needs of different locations. So if you have a very specific application that is very required that has a lot of traffic in certain times of year, you can ramp up the deployment for that specific application to meet the needs and then ramp it down elastically. You have other applications that are more consistent access patterns, then you can have a different Access Gateway set of appliances that are addressing that. And so the vision is to have the central plane of control, the central connective fabric to your on-premises hybrid IT environment, all connected back to Okta and make it deployable across the globe. And you get massive scale, centralized control, and it integrates better with customers who are really becoming the new norm, but customers who are managing IT with this continuous integration, continuous deployment philosophy. And then also it gives the ability for customers to do that continuous risk assessment for all of their resources. So that session integrity checking and that granular session controls, but applied to everywhere. So that's our vision for the product going forward. And our roadmap for 2021, our themes are really in support of that. So we're looking to automate configuration as number one goal. Number two, just behind number one, is the ability to scale to over 1,000 applications in a single cluster. And then to improve observability and control across the board. So here's how that plays out in the calendar view. So in Q1, everything that's highlighted in green are actually things we've already delivered in the first quarter of this year. So that FedRAMP moderate ATO that I mentioned, also granular session expiry, client certificate check behaviors, which is another type of behavior that you can check for the presence and validity of a certificate that's provided to control access even further and even more specifically to that backend application. The ability to normalize URL case, which provides an administrative benefit to setting up granular policies. And then the second half of the year, we're hoping to exit the first half of the year, the second quarter. We're hoping to exit the first half of the year with the ability to bootstrap a new OAG instance with a configuration file. So extract all that configuration and bootstrap it in a new location. That helps automation considerably. And by the end of the year, you should be able to use automation tools such as Ansible and Terraform to automate the OAG deployment and to maintain it over time. We're also planning to reduce the dependency on application load balancers to your backend application by building that load balancing capability into Access Gateway directly. You'll see investments in the restyling and up leveling of our administrative UI that I showed you in the demo, such that it'll scale more naturally to support over 1,000 applications. And it will also look and feel more modern. We'll be deploying OAG. We'll be providing a version of OAG that can be deployed easily on Nutanix AHV, which is a popular hyperconverged infrastructure option that our customers ask for. And you'll see OAG documentation in Japanese. And then finally, around improving the ability to observe and control Access Gateway centrally, we'll be providing a web-based endpoint to pull metrics from that allows you to see everything that's going on with Access Gateway and the backend applications and how things are running and to adapt accordingly. And then the second half of the year, we'll be adding tools for customers and for our support teams and our partners to see TCP activity, the traffic is actually flowing through Access Gateway, give you tools to view that more easily so that you can more easily troubleshoot, but also just get a sense for like the type of activity that's going to these backend applications. We'll be finally adding the ability for you to handle logs better. So Access Gateway generates a ton of logs, and that's because it is that inline proxy and it is inspecting all that traffic that's going through. And we provide that visibility to our customers today, but that creates an unwieldy amount of logs if you have that all turned on. So what we want to add is tools to better view and forward and filter those logs so you can get at the relevant bits while still maintaining the broad purview about what's going on in the environment and zoom in and out very quickly. So we'll be adding tools in the second half of the year to help with that. So that's the roadmap. That's what we're expecting to do in 2021. And long term, that vision, again, is to provide that single identity fabric comprising multiple Access Gateway deployments that are deployed to meet the needs of whatever applications and environments you're deploying them in, and expanding that the scope of Access Gateway to include new resources such as APIs. So that's what we're up to with Access Gateway. And just to circle back on hybrid IT, there's a lot more to come across these the various tracks in Octane. This is a topic that's near and dear to a lot of our hearts at Okta. And so join the session around ASA for connecting to servers and other sessions in the hybrid IT track. We have a whole track that's dedicated to this. But just to wrap up from an Access Gateway and hybrid IT perspective, hybrid IT is prevalent. Most of you are probably facing some of these challenges today. Hopefully some of the challenges that we highlighted initially are relevant and resonate with you. I hope you learned a new way from this presentation to connect Okta to a legacy or on-premises or hybrid IT resource that you didn't see a path to before. And it broadens your perspective on the type of help that Okta can provide for you. Hopefully you see an opportunity for Access Gateway to provide that seamless experience to your backend applications, the ones that are hosted by a partner or hosted in your environment that you maintain, and provide that SaaS-like experience for logging into those. Thank you.